let's get into the scoping tool. So some of you might have already used it. For some others, it might be completely new. And the objective of the presentation right now is to explain you a bit, the ins and outs of this tool, and to see, well, how can you use it? And you will see that it's actually relatively easy. So first of all, of course, very important question, where can I find it? Where can I get it? So it's available on Safe on Web at Work on 2 pages, actually, on our Quick Start Guide and on our NIS2 page. You might have already stumbled upon these pages in the past. And there's a big green button that says download the NIS2 Scope Test Tool. It's pretty hard to miss. And once you click on it, you will be able to see that you download an Excel file. That's the whole tool. It's an Excel tool. And then you already have it. So that's pretty easy. And then you might ask yourself, well, what data do I need? What do I have to fill out in the tool to get the actual result? Well, first of all, you will need information about your size. That's the size cap. And then you will need information about, well, your activities. What services do you provide to other organizations? You will need some information about whether you are established in Belgium, your link with our country, etc. And then also you will need some information on where you provide your services. Is that in Belgium? Is it abroad? Is it elsewhere in the EU, etc. So if you look at these 4 elements a bit more in detail, on the next slide, you will see what exactly I am talking about. And then, of course, the end result is going to be to answer the question, well, does my organization fall under NIS2 in Belgium? So let's take a closer look at the different data that you should have at hand. So for the size cap, to calculate the size of your organization, you first of all need the amount of full-time equivalents. So that's also called the head count. So really the amount of people that work in your organization, your annual turnover, and the annual balance sheet total. These are the financial data. What's very important for groups of companies, that's that these different data will have to be consolidated within partner or linked enterprises. And there's different rules available. We won't go too much in detail, but what we always recommend is to read the specific user guide on the SME definition from the European Commission, which provides very, very interesting guidance and, well, very helpful guidance as well on how to calculate these different elements. And a link is actually available in the scope tool, and I will show you that in detail when we analyze it concretely later. For the services provided, as I already said, you need to really analyze each and every service that you provide in Belgium, or well, as generally in the European Union. Even the most even the most ancillary services are important, because they could also make you fall under the scope of NIS2. And then you check the link with Belgium. Well, the most obvious thing here is, well, is your organization established in Belgium? That should be relatively easy. Do you have your main establishment in Belgium? That is specifically for those organizations in the digital sector, and you will see a bit more information about that later. There's also a question on whether you provide domain name registration services. Here again, a bit more technical and digital. And also this, if you are a telecom service provider, whether you do this in Belgium as well, or your public administration. And lastly, are you a critical infrastructure or critical entity? More information about that in a bit as well. Don't worry. And then for where you provide your services, well, do you provide them in Belgium or do you provide them elsewhere? Again, important information that we need. So once you have this at hand, or even if you don't have them at hand, what you can do right now is actually go ahead and download the scope test tool, and then we can go through it together. And then if you have questions, you can ask them later afterwards in the breakout room. So when you open the scope test tool, the first thing you see is the README. So it explains you how to use the scope assessment tool, and there's a couple of steps. They are explained in a bit more detail, but basically it's relatively simple. You go to the second sheet, which is called scope assessment, and then, well, there's all sorts of indications to help you through the whole process. It's important to read the different comments that are also in the tool, which give you some important information, background information, also the details on definitions, etc. You change the different options in Excel from yes to no, or from select to yes or to no, to adapt it to your organization. And then you receive the end result at the bottom. And then the end result can then be several things. For example, well, it could be out of scope, it could be important, it could be essential, things like that. But it's important to highlight that this is, of course, just a tool, and but it, of course, does not replace a complete legal analysis. So let's hop into the second sheet. Let's check the scope assessment sheet. Let's look at the size cap, first of all. So I told you that for the size cap, you need to, well, it's in the name, you need to calculate your size. You have these three elements: full-time equivalence, turnover, balance sheet. The three possible results are that you are a large enterprise, a medium-sized enterprise, or a micro or small enterprise. You will notice that generally it's only the medium and the large enterprises that fall under NIS2, but there are certain exceptions, and these are taken into account in the tool. So you can see that there are different criteria. So you have from larger than 250 FTE, for example, or less than 250 but more than 50 FTE, etc. There are different options you can select here within the tool, and that will calculate everything for you. So you just select the right option, and then you get one of the results. So to help you, as I mentioned before, where you have the link to the legal text, which provides you more information. But most importantly, there's the link to this famous user guide to really help you calculate all these different elements. And then the European Union actually also published a tool where you can like input your different data from your organization, but also from like partner enterprises and linked enterprises, and it will put everything together and analyze whether you qualify as an SME, so as a small, medium, as a small or medium enterprise, exactly. We highly recommend these. They are very interesting, very important, and really you should read them. And then one important last highlight is that you will notice that in the calculation of the tool for the financial data, the tool only takes into account the lowest of the two. That's because there's actually the possibility led to organizations to choose which financial headcount they take into account. So if there's one that's lower than the other in terms of thresholds, you will see that in the tool when you click on the different options and see the different possible results, that, well, you could exceed one of the financial ceilings without that having an impact on your SME status. Right, and that's already the first one. And then we look at the services. So what services do you provide, basically? And then you have a long list in the tool of different services. And these actually correspond to the annexes of the NIS2 law. There's very different sectors: energy, transport, etc. And there's also some information on jurisdiction. This is really just for information on that step because it is taken into account in step C. So for example, if you look at the sector health, you have different possibilities: healthcare, reference laboratories, etc. What is really important here is actually to look at what we call the tooltip. So it's additional information that is available in the Excel sheet, which you can see when you hover your mouse over the different cells. And this actually gives you information on what is meant by, for example, here, a healthcare provider. So if we hover our mouse over this cell, you will see that it means it's a healthcare provider as defined in a specific directive from the European Union. Then the second question you might ask yourself is, well, what is that definition from that directive from the European Union? Well, to help these different, to help actually all different organizations to more easily find the different definitions that are referred to in the annexes, we created another tool. And we call that the NIS2 definition matrix, because the definitions are sometimes very long, so it was easier to create a separate tool, which is available on the NIS2 page that I mentioned earlier, and which actually contains all the definitions from all the organizations, from all the types of entities, as we call them, that are mentioned in the annexes. And if we here look at healthcare provider, you will see that there's the definition in the tool right here as it is explained on the slide. So this should really be your thought process. You look at the different services that are provided in the tool. You check, okay, under which service could I fall? You look at the comments, and from there on, you go to the, if necessary, the NIS2 definition matrix. So you look up the precise definition, and then you can have more certainty whether you fall under it or not. And then if you think that might be the case, you can just change this from no, in this case, to yes. So there's a small arrow next to it. You click on it, you select yes. And then the tool will automatically calculate that you have selected yes and take that into account for your end result. And that's already step B. Then we look at step C. So we talked about the link with Belgium. This is what we commonly call jurisdiction. So once you head to that step, you will see that there are different possibilities. You will also see that some of these are grayed out. This is intentional. This is because the tool takes into account the response that you have, the response says that you have given in step B. So if you select something where main establishment could be applicable, it will not be gray anymore. But in this case, as in the example we have just selected healthcare provider, the different elements here are still grayed out because they are not applicable. But I'm still going to explain them to give you a complete overview. So yeah, like I said, if they are grayed out, you should not answer. Now here again, there's an important tooltip. Well, there are 3 important tooltips actually, but I will provide you information on all of these elements. So you can see here, for example, that the concept of establishment is actually very large. So there's a high chance, if your organization is in Belgium, that it is actually established in Belgium, but I will let you read that peacefully afterwards. You have main establishment, which is only for the digital sector and which entails a series of criteria to know where your main establishment is. This is all included in the tooltip over there. Then you have the domain name registrations. Here again, there's more information for that in the tooltip. You will be able to check that on your own. And then you also have everything related to telecom. This is really to confirm that you actually provide the telecommunication service in Belgium. You have also more information, well, or rather a confirmation on whether you are a public administration that is actually established by Belgium, specifically for that. And then the last point is CER, what we call CER, so critical entity legislation. Many people often ask us what this actually is about, what this actually means. Well, CER stands for, well, the legislation on critical infrastructure, so it's called Critical Entities Resilience, the abbreviation. And in Belgium, it's currently a law from 2011 that is soon going to be updated by a European directive. And well, these organizations that are critical are specifically identified by a Belgian authority as being critical. So usually these organizations are aware that they are critical because it entails some specific further obligations. If you want more information about that, there's the link here in the slides to the official page from the Crisis Center that gives you more information, like I said, on this whole legislation and everything that can be included, etc. So once you've gone through this process, step C, you can head to step D, which is the service provision location. And here you have just 2 things you can select. Do you provide your services in Belgium? And do you provide them in another member state of the EU? It's important to note because, well, to fall under NIS2, you must do either, well, provide a service in Belgium or in the EU or both. And then we already had people asking us, well, what do you consider being a service? There's a whole definition right here. So it refers to the Treaty of the Function of the European Union. Not going to go into too much detail about that. The slides are available in the resources tab, will be available after the presentation, and you will be able to look at that in more detail if you want to. And that's already it. So I clocked in around 15 minutes to go through the test with all the different explanations. I'm sure if you do it yourself, might be a bit faster. So the end result you can get is shown in this cell right here. And there's multiple possible results, actually. So as I've mentioned earlier, you could be out of scope, you could be important or even essential. And then there's other specific results that you could see For example, you're out of scope, but you still have to register. That is for organizations that only provide domain name registration services, but nothing else. So it's a really, really specific case. And then you have that the CCB can identify you as essential or important, and that's specifically for public administrations that depend on the federated entities and that do, well, just that, and that are not active in another sector of the NIS2 law. So it's just 5 possible results. And that's it. So now you have your results, and you might ask yourself, well, what do I have to do with that? What's next? So if your organization is in scope, the first thing you should do is register on Safe On Web at Work, and Carl will guide you through all that process and what it entails in the next presentation. You should also start taking cybersecurity measures. For that, of course, at the CCB, we highly recommend you our own Cyber Fundamentals framework, which is available at siphon.be. And the third thing you should do, and that's really the main elements, is to notify your significant incidents. And here again, we have already a lot of information available. We have our own platform for incident notification, notif.safeonweb.be. And if you are unsure about what type exactly of incident you should notify, I saw in the poll that many of you want to see a presentation on incident response. Well, one of these elements is identifying when an incident is supposed to be, well, significant and when it has to be notified. So for this, we prepared a whole guidance document that is available on that link right there. But then, of course, there's also the possibility, what if my organization is out of scope? And Johan spoiled it a little bit in the beginning, but there's something you could still do. I mean, you could still register on Safe On Web at Work. You could still use the Cyber Fundamentals framework. And a tip is to also use Siphon if you think you're going to be a supplier of a NIS2 entity, because NIS2 entities have the obligation to secure their supply chain, which could mean that they might impose some cybersecurity measures onto you. So if you already have a certain Siphon level, that's going to be highly advantageous for you. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. Like I said, if you have questions about the scope, please don't hesitate to ask them. Thank you.